This will be the final video showing the repair of the Sellita watch. The first thing I want to do is remove the crystal from the case because the crystal that's in it now is very badly scratched up, so I've got a new crystal for it. And then after I take the crystal out, I'm going to clean the case because it's pretty dirty too. So what we're going to use for that is a crystal lift. And it has these jaws that close down around the edge of the crystal, and they compress the crystal so that we can pull it out of the case. Now these only work on acrylic crystals, which is what this has. You can't use these for sapphire crystals or mineral glass crystals. It'll shatter those because they're not flexible. And you can't use it on acrylic crystals that have a tension ring because it'll damage those as well. But this is just a plain acrylic crystal, so it should come out with this. The crystal lift that I'm going to use is a Bergeon crystal lift, and it was expensive. It was like $130. I originally bought one of these cheap Chinese-made ones, or actually I think this one's from India, and it doesn't work very well. The jaws on it, you can see, are uneven. See how some of the little claws are closer together than others, and some of them stick in further than others. They're not forming a perfect circle, and I've damaged crystals using this. I paid $14 for it, and I got what I paid for. So when you buy one of these, get one of the good Bergeon ones. The cheap ones are not worth the money. So the way this works is you take the watch and you put the fingers of the crystal over the edge of the crystal, and you tighten the knob. I'm going to set this down flat on the surface of the table to do this. Oh, it just popped off. This one's going to be hard to get out because the bezel is scalloped and raised up around the edges of it, so it's going to be hard to get a good grip on it with the crystal lift. So let's try this again. There we go. I don't think I had the crystal lift down far enough the first time. And there we go, lifted right off. And here you can see the crystal stuck in the jaws of the crystal lift, and you can see all the scratches on it too. It's pretty tore up. And there's a lot of dirt or gunk around the edges of the crystal. The crystal I'm just going to throw away because, like I said, I've got a brand new one for this. And there's our case. You can see the back of the case. That's not really so much, there's a lot of dirt on it, but it also has some brassing because this is a brass case that's chrome plated and the chrome has worn away. So some of what you're seeing there is the brassing, and some of it is actual dirt. There's a lot of dust and filth in there too that we're going to try to clean out. Probably some dried up lubricants that have come off the movement. I've put the case into a little short mason jar. This is a little 8-ounce size wide mouth mason jar, so it's not real deep, with a little bit of 91% alcohol in it. The alcohol will dissolve any dried lubricants and other gunk that's in here, but it won't damage the case of the watch. I took a case from one of these generic Swiss watches I was servicing before and tried to clean it in my watch cleaning machine using the Chrono Clean machine that I use for the watch parts. And I used the watch cleaning chemicals, the L&R extra fine watch cleaning chemical and the L&R watch rinse. And it dulled the finish of the chrome a little bit. So I don't know if that is not something that's good to use for cases. So I'm going to use alcohol instead because I've used alcohol in the past to clean watch cases and it never had any bad effect on the finish. So I'm just going to let it soak in here and swishing it around a little bit to let it soak into any dried up, hardened crap that's on there. I'm using cotton swabs to do some of the cleaning on this as well. And the ones I'm using are these sharp-pointed cotton swabs that are called nail teas. They're sold for women to use in nail salons for cleaning people's fingernails and applying nail polish and such. But they work really well for watchmakers because they have a sharp point that lets you clean out little areas like this. And I'm cleaning here at the bottom of one of the lugs because these get really filthy, the bottoms of the lugs do, being against people's dirty skin, absorbing all that sweat. And you can see that swab starting to get pretty filthy from wiping up the gunk off there. And we need to clean all the way around here because this whole thing's got a ridge at the bottom of it that needs to be cleaned around. Now a lot of that's not really dirt, some of it's brassing where the chrome was worn away, but there's also a lot of dirt in there because you can see the swab is just getting filthier and filthier as I work. So I'm going to keep doing this off camera so you don't have to sit here and watch me do this for 20 minutes or however long it takes to do it. But I'm going to clean the inside of the case, all this in here. I'm going to clean the outside of the case, especially around where the case back goes in. And I'm going to clean the area around the bezel where the crystal goes in, the little ledge that it sits on, because that was real dirty too. I want to get this thing really, really clean before I put it back together, before we put a new crystal in it. One area you want to be sure to get clean is the very back area that the case back goes up against when it's tightened down, because that is really filthy on this one. and that will keep it from getting a good seal on the case back, and will let dirt and moisture and such get inside. Look how filthy that's getting just from wiping the stuff off there. This is the package that the nail teas come in. This is the cotton swabs I'm using. These were recommended by Alex Hamilton on his watch repair tutorials channel, and they work really well for watchmaking stuff. They're great for cleaning little narrow spaces like these crevices here that the crystal goes in and everything. Once I get all this clean, then I'll dry it off with a hairdryer to make sure that all the alcohol is evaporated off of it. And then we can install a new crystal in it. I have the crystal put on this staging platform that came with the crystal lift, and the purpose of this is that this metal sliding plate that you have to push up against the side of the crystal elevates the crystal lift's teeth a little bit above the bottom of the crystal, because you need a little bit of the crystal sticking out from the bottom of it to fit into the watch case. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to fit the crystal all the way in. And the way that you want to do this is you lay the crystal lift over the crystal, and then tighten the teeth down around it, and then tighten it more after you get it tight, and you're wanting to compress the crystal. Now, you don't want to turn it too much because you can damage the crystal if you turn it too much. If it's too tight, you can crack the crystal. The trick is you want to get it tightened down enough that it compresses the crystal so it'll fit in the watch case, but not tightened down so much that it cracks the crystal. And I don't have it quite tightened down quite enough now. It wouldn't fit in, so let's tighten it a little more. Okay, now it's fitting. So I'm going to set this flat on the table. This case isn't flat. I think the lugs are bent on it. I've seen a couple of these other watches that were like this. Okay, now that I've got it in there flat, I'm going to loosen the crystal lift. Oh, it still wouldn't go in. It popped back out again. Okay, I picked the crystal back up again. Once again, using the staging platform. I'm going to tighten it a little more, because I don't think I had it tightened up enough before that it would go all the way in. We'll try this one more time. Part of the problem here is these scalloped sides of the bezel, I think, is keeping the crystal from wanting to seat all the way down. And I think I still don't have it compressed enough too. I may have to put this in with a crystal press instead of using the crystal lift. I decided to try something different. I think that it was not leaving enough of the crystal sticking out below the teeth of the crystal lift to fit into this scallop bezel. So what I did was I manually held the crystal when I tightened the crystal lift around it so that it had more sticking out. I'm going to see if this is going to let this work. So I got to tighten it up some more. Ooh, I heard something crack. Hopefully it's not breaking. I heard that though before when I worked with one of these other crystals. It made sounds like that were kind of ominous, but it did work without actually breaking. If I break this, I'll just buy a new crystal. Oh, we're almost there. It's almost one to push in. It seems like the case is stuck on it. Maybe it is. If I loosen the crystal lift, maybe it'll stay in. Hey, there we go. It is in now, so that did work. I'm looking at the crystal to make sure that it looks even, where it's not higher on one side than another, and I think I got it good. This crystal is a little higher dome than the one that came with it. I probably should have bought a low dome crystal, but I think this will probably still look okay. I'm not sure if the crystal that I took out of it was the original either, because the other watches of this type that I've seen all had higher crystals than the one I took out of it, so this high dome crystal may be more accurate anyway. So yeah, it's looking good. The next thing we need to do is put the dial on the movement and then the hands, and then once we've done that, we can then case the movement. Our dial is right here, and it has 2 feet on the bottom of it that stick into holes in the movement base plate. So we need to get those aligned, and we need to do it so that the stem side of the movement is where the number 3 needs to go. So if you put the 3 by the stem, it should go right on. I'm going to drop the dial onto the base plate with the number 3 aligned with the stem, and it goes right into the holes on the top of the movement. Now we need to look at it from the side and make sure that it's pushed down all the way around it. Make sure it's evenly pushed down all around, so that it's not sticking up on one side or the other. It looks like we're good. We have 2 dial screws we need to put in to fix the dial in position. One of them is at the 7 o'clock position and one is at the 4 o'clock position. So we'll go ahead and do that next. I have the dial set now. The dial screws are both in place. They're hard to see there because they're deeply recessed into the movement base plate, but they are both set. So now we need to put on the hands. and the hands have to be put on in a specific way. The hour hand goes on first, and you can see the way that I put it on here. I have it pointing directly at the number 3. When you put the hour hand on, you need to have it point directly at one of the numbers. It doesn't matter which one it is. It could be the 1, the 2, the 3, the 12, the 6, the 9, whatever. It doesn't matter, as long as it's pointing directly at one of the hour markers. You don't want it in between two of the hour markers, because when you put the minute hand on, they won't be in sync with each other. So when the minute hand goes up to the 12, the hour hand should point directly at an hour number, but if you don't put them on correctly, the hour hand will point between two hour numbers when the minute hand is at the 12. So it's important that the hour hand be put on a line like this, pointed at one of the numbers, and I've chosen to use the number 3 this time. And after you put the hands on, you need to double check and make sure that the hand is setting level, that it's not tilted one direction or another. And it needs to be pressed down far enough that the top of the hand is flush with the top of the tube that it rides on. The hour hand rides on the tube that sticks up from the top of the hour wheel. And I don't know how well we can see this here on camera, but we can see that well. The silver tube sticking up through the middle of the hour hand is the cannon pinion, and that's what the minute hand is going to ride on. And then there's a real thin post sticking up in the middle of the cannon pinion, and that's what the second hand is going to ride on. So we're going to do the minute hand next. The minute hand needs to point directly at the 12 when we have this set up. So the minute hand will point directly at the 12, and the hour hand will point directly at one of the other numbers, and that will ensure that they stay in perfect sync with each other as the watch tells time. I've got the minute hand set now, and as you can see, it's pointing directly at the 12, and the hour hand is still pointing directly at the 3. The next thing we're going to put on is the second hand, and the second hand, it doesn't really matter where it points. You can have it point at anything you want. It doesn't need to be perfectly synced with the other two hands, but the minute hand and hour hand must be set up just like this. Another note on this too, right now the watch is not running. You can set the hands while the watch is running, but it's a real pain to do, because when you put the hour hand on, if it's still running, by the time you get the second hands put on and aligned, the hour hand may have moved a little bit out of alignment. It is so much easier to do when the watch is not running. So I let this set for a couple days. After the last section of this video, I actually let the watch sit for a couple days so that it wound all the way down and wasn't running anymore. If you don't want to wait for that, you can always turn the movement over and move the click out of the way with a screwdriver while you're holding on to the stem, and slowly let the stem rotate in your fingers to let the tension out. You don't want to let it go out real fast. If you let it spin out and let all the spring tension fly out quick like that, you can damage the gears in the watch. So you do not want to do that. And because it's kind of dangerous to do, I've had it slip a little bit sometimes when I wasn't holding on tight enough. I prefer to just let it run down naturally. I've got plenty of time. I'm not doing this professionally, so I don't have a client breathing down my neck wanting their watch back fast. And that's what I recommend, is just letting it run down naturally. Most of these watches have like a 40-hour or so power reserve, so a couple of days and it's wound down. You can do this. So let's go ahead and put the second hand on next. The second hand is set now. The next thing we need to do is remove the stem from the watch. And the reason we need to do that is because we need to case the watch next. And you have to have the stem removed before you can put it into the case. So to remove the stem, we have to turn the watch over, or turn the movement over, and loosen the stem retaining screw, which is this screw right here. Now we don't want to loosen it a lot. As I mentioned in the disassembly video, if you turn it too much, the detent lever will fall off on the other side of the movement. And if that happens, we have to take the hands back off and take the dial off to get to it in order to put the detent lever back on. We don't want that to happen, so we really only want to loosen this about 2 turns. To case the watch, I placed the movement on a casing cushion. Now I've taken the case, and if you remember when I installed the crystal in the case, the crystal was pretty filthy. It had a lot of lint and dust on it. So I cleaned the inside of the crystal out before we do this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the case, and I'm going to lay it on top of the movement with the stem tube aligned with the number 3, at least as close as we can get it. And then I'll pick up the casing cushion, put my hand over the movement, flip it over, and there it is, it's in. Now we need to put the stem back in. There we go. And then we need to tighten the stem retaining screw. Next thing to do is put in the retaining ring for the movement. And the movement retaining ring has a cutout in one section of it for the stem to go through. So that needs to go over the stem. Looks like I don't have it lined up right. Turn it here with a screwdriver. There we go. Now it's lined up with the stem. So once it's lined up, we can just push it down with our fingers. Looks like it's not wanting to go down all the way evenly. I wonder if I had kind of pushed it out around or something when I was pulling it out earlier. Oh, there we go. Now I got it in. Now that that's in, then I need to push the stem back in because it was out in the time setting position. And what we need to do next is we need to start the movement back up and then regulate it. So before we do that, I'm going to put the case back on it again so that the movement doesn't fall out when I put it on the Timegrapher. Alright, well it's fully cased up now. I didn't tighten it back on real tight because I'm going to have to take it back off when we regulate the watch in order to make adjustments if necessary. But the first thing we need to do now is let's go ahead and wind the stem and see if the movement comes to life then like it should. And there it goes. Just a couple winds that got started. That's good. That means it doesn't have a lot of beat error. Real high beat error will cause a watch to not want to start when you first start winding it. I'm going to wind it up all the way, which is hard to do when you're wearing rubber gloves. Oh, there we go. Now it's all the way wound. So let's go ahead and put it on the Timegrapher and see what kind of results we get. Got the watch on the Timegrapher, so let's go ahead and take a look at the screen and see what kind of results we're getting. One thing that you might notice on my Timegrapher too is that I've got blue masking tape wrapped around one of the brackets that holds the watch in place. The reason I've done that is because this watch has one of the brackets, the one that's the sliding one, is made out of plastic and the other one is made out of steel. And I was afraid the steel one would scratch watch cases, so that's why I've wrapped it in tape. Plastic shouldn't scratch a watch case because plastics are softer than metals. Well, here's our results. Looks like it's about 16 to 18 seconds a day. Fast. Amplitude's 254, which is acceptable. I wish it were a little higher, but I'm going to not be too unhappy about that, given that this is a watch that's over 70 years old. It's a huge improvement over what it was before. I think the amplitude was like 120 or something like that when I got started. I can't remember now. I forgot to write it down, but it was very low. Beat error is only 0.7 milliseconds, so I think that that's pretty good. I've actually never serviced a watch before where just right after the service with no regulation, everything was this close to being good. Now I'm gonna adjust the rate because it's running too fast, but it's not horribly bad. Most of the watches I've serviced, the rate was either too fast or too slow by huge amounts, like a couple minutes a day. With this being, between 15 and 20 seconds a day fast, it's showing. That's not good because it can be better, but that's really a lot better than any of the other watches I've serviced right after I've finished putting them together and before I regulated them. So this one here was a very easy job. And it won't be too hard to get this rate set to something closer to perfect. So let's go ahead and take it off the Timegrapher and do that. I've got the back off the watch again and put it back on the casing cushion so that we can regulate it. This watch only has one thing that we can change for regulation because it doesn't have a movable hairspring stud for changing the beat error like a more modern watch does. If I were going to adjust the beat error on this, I would have to remove the balance wheel from the movement and then turn the hairspring collet, which is the little ring that holds the end of the hairspring, to the balance staff. And that involves reaching in through the hairspring with a very small tool like a thin screwdriver and sticking it into a slot in the collet to turn it. It's really risky, and I don't like doing that. And fortunately, this one has a beat error of 0.7 milliseconds. Well, anything less than 1 is good. That won't affect timekeeping accuracy, so I don't have to adjust it. I'm just going to leave it alone. If this were a modern watch, I would probably adjust it anyway and try to get it closer to 0, but because of how difficult it is to adjust beat error on these older watches, I'm not going to mess with it. So the other thing that we can adjust is the rate. And the rate is adjusted by moving this little lever right here back and forth. And you can see it's got the minus and plus, so it can tell you which direction to move it. And we're running a little bit too fast today. So what I want to do is move it slightly, and I mean very slightly, toward the negative side. You don't want to move it as far as one of the little tick marks. If you move it that far from where it's at to the next tick mark over, you're going to introduce a change of probably about a minute or so in its rate. Well, we don't need to make that big of a change because it's really running about 15 to 20 seconds a day fast right now. So I want to move it just a tiny imperceptible amount and then check it again on the Timegrapher and see where we're at and make another adjustment if necessary after that. I'm not going to do that under the camera lens because it's too hard for me to see what I'm doing. So, well, here's our numbers after regulation. We're about 6 seconds per day fast now, 262 degrees of amplitude. That's gone up a little bit. I found that a well-regulated watch tends to have higher amplitude than one that's way off. beat error is a little higher than it was before, 0.9 milliseconds, but I think we can live with that for a watch this old. So yeah, I think we've got pretty much perfect results. Now that the watch is regulated, I'll go ahead and tighten down the case back with its final tightening. Here we go. Now I need to put the strap on it, and I need to set the time, and we'll be all set. It'll be ready to wear. So there's the Sellita watch on my wrist. I've got the band on it. I've got the time set. It's running, looking beautiful. So much nicer than it was when we first started out with that scratched up crystal and dirty case and movement that was running way too slow. So this one came out beautifully. This is one of the easiest ones I've serviced. I've never had one before, like I said, that right after the service, the initial Timegrapher readings were so close to where they should have been.